Today we were joined by PD Mangan, the owner of roguehealthandfitness.com. One of the coolest websites I've seen as far as just no nonsense, matter of fact, what's really going on in health. Is the author of Dumping Iron, which is probably, I would say, the best go-to source, even more so than any academic research I've seen on it in regards to just how toxic iron is, raised ferritin levels are. Got a new book out called Muscle Up, talking about body composition and how that's more important than, just strictly weight. We're going to get deep into that. So, PD, thanks for joining us, man. And awesome to talk to you.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here.
So I got to say, we had Dr. Zakarski on, who was one of the first guests on the podcast. And, this guy's doing some insane research. If you look at the topics, and it's almost embarrassing that the mainstream medical community does not take a lick or a shine to how destructive iron is, ferritin levels. How did you get into this? Because no one's reaching as many people, I feel, about this topic than you are. I mean, if you go on the internet, no one's really writing, everyone's focusing on ketogenic diet. They're focusing on just a lot of nonsense. And this is something that's, as far as bang for your buck and pure longevity, I've never seen anything like this.
Well, I of course agree with that assessment. How I got into it, I'm not really sure, but I started investigating it, and it seemed very compelling to me. So I started reading more and more scientific articles about it. The scientific articles certainly do exist, but they're not widely publicized, and most people are ignoring them. Anyway, I wrote a little bit about it for my website, and I just kept discovering more and more aspects of this that made it more and more compelling. And by the time I had written, I don't know what, a dozen articles on varying aspects of iron, I decided, well, I really needed to write a book about it. So, and by that time, most of this stuff was just all up here in my head. And so I just put it all into the book and got it out there.
So what initially drew you into, what draws a guy like you into the health community, to take it upon yourself to research this stuff and not basically, have to be at the beck and call of a physician who's, or something like that?
Well, good question. I studied microbiology and pharmacology way back when I was in college, and so I've always been interested in health and fitness. I used to be from fairly early on. I used to be a runner. I ran. I eventually became a vegetarian because I thought that was the best thing to do at the time. So I've always been into it. And then when I was in my 40s, I became pretty ill with something very mysterious, chronic fatigue. And no one could figure it out. I went to a number of different doctors and so on. And eventually, I just had to take matters into my own hands and try and figure out what was going on. And so I eventually did that. With help from a good doctor. And I remember at the time thinking, when I was going through all this, that if I ever figured this out and I ever get over chronic fatigue, I'm going to write a book about it. And so that's what I did. That was my first book, Smash Chronic Fatigue. Do you think
chronic, the catch-all phrase, chronic fatigue syndrome, that's bullshit for the most part? I mean, what?
I think it could be. I think it could be a number of different things. It's not any one thing, but I do think that for many cases of it, diet, lifestyle, and so on are very important. And that by getting these factors all, properly aligned, you get, your sleep, your vitamin D, your exercise, your diet properly, that a lot of it can be overcome. And for example, very early on when I was researching it, I was still a vegetarian. You know, I'm reading about this stuff and I'm thinking, I remember there was some moment when I thought, you know, maybe this isn't such a good idea after all. And, you know, a light bulb clicked on and I realized that was part of it. So I eventually started making changes and eventually got over it. And I think that a lot of people could do that. I wouldn't want to make the claim that every single person could possibly do it. There's been a lot of talk about viral causes and this kind of thing, but in my opinion, a lot of people who have chronic fatigue could get over it if they did the right things with their lifestyle.
So what, like looking back on it, what were some things that you were doing that put you at risk or exacerbated these symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome?
Well, two main things. One was being a vegetarian, and the other was distance running. So I was doing both of those at the same time. I was not only a vegetarian, but I was a vegan. I'm somewhat sheepish to say right now, but I was. And
we all make mistakes, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. But you know, that was the thing. You know, you eat low-fat vegetarian, and it'll save you from heart disease and so on. And that was the thinking, and it still is the thinking among a lot of people now. But when you put your body through the tremendous stress of distance running, and I was doing it daily or nearly daily, and you're not supplying your body with the right kind of nutrition to help you keep up all that, to support your body, you eventually go into a state of fatigue, and I believe that's what happened to me. And also, my experience with chronic fatigue, how it affected me, how I got over it, it really does inform a lot of my views on health and fitness now. Now, you know, chronic fatigue isn't terribly common. You know, most of the people that read my site, for instance, you know, have never had it, I'm sure. But it's indicative, and I realized that a lot of what my experience told me that a lot of what the mainstream recommends for your health and fitness is, if not totally wrong, at least misguided and not optimal.
So it definitely seems like we're at this crossroads right now where you have mainstream health who they've been pushing, you know, the disease nature of healthcare. So there's an issue, we have to treat it. There's something wrong with you. Now, you brought up a really great point with the long distance running. I want to dive into that and obviously the deficiencies and all kinds of, you know, how we're clearly not designed to be vegetarian. I mean,
right.
The inflammatory state of disease and how, you know, guys like you and this is that fork in the road right now where the average person and all this information out there, the pharmaceutical companies, the major medical community at large is not accepting the fact that there's really no such thing as disease and there's just an inflammatory state just localized at different parts of the body. I mean, that's a very broad way to put it, but you know, where do you see this going, and what are some things things that you've done specifically to combat this pervasive inflammatory state that is clearly the root of most disease states?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I think that you're largely correct here about this pervasive inflammatory state, and a lot of it is driven by what we eat. For instance, sugar and white flour in the diet, this kind of thing, increases insulin resistance, increases inflammation. There's take for instance the issue of heart disease. You mentioned the pharmaceutical companies, and what they all want to do is put everybody on a statin. And statins, they are a very, as I see it, a very minor benefit with quite a few bad side effects. But what they do, the source of this very minor benefit, is that they decrease inflammation. And I think that's that's likely a very key problem in causing heart disease. I don't believe any of the cholesterol stuff that they put out, which is in the mainstream.
Well,
It's
some of the studies are actually showing that it can cause more heart attacks. You know, if you these long-term statin use.
Yes, that's right. There's some studies showing that it can calcify the arteries and yes, and that sort of thing.
So I mean, what so how, with this transition out of veganism, you know, what was the process there? What happened?
Well, you know, it was just reading and studying and getting into the original articles. Very specifically, what I discovered was that I had low levels of glutathione, and glutathione is the body's main internal antioxidant. And if you have low levels of glutathione, that means your body is in a state of oxidative stress. Oxidative stress goes along with inflammation as indicative of you know, an unhealthy state and of aging. So when I discovered, and the other thing about glutathione is that this is not a test that is done by a normal clinical
Oh,
lab.
they won't even know. They'll laugh you out of the office.
Right. So you have to have this specially done and everything. And yeah, I was actually, what was going on with my chronic fatigue all along was that they couldn't find any specific laboratory abnormalities. You know, I would go through various testing, all kinds of different testing, in fact, and everything looked normal. So finally had a glutathione level done, and lo and behold, it was abnormal, very abnormal. And that led me on this chase to try and figure out what that was all about. And so the thing about glutathione, when it's low, it indicates oxidative stress, and protein is very important for maintaining glutathione levels. Glutathione is a tripeptide, 3 amino acids, and you need protein. There's even a theory of chronic fatigue, which I find pretty compelling, that the idea that if somebody has low glutathione, that the immune system has priority for this glutathione in the body. It takes it, it comes out of the muscles, then you feel fatigue. Whatever the case, protein is important, and I realized, well, gee, eating how I'm eating, being a vegan, I'm not getting enough protein. And so there are specific kinds of protein that help replenish glutathione. Whey protein especially has a high level of cysteine, and so cysteine is the rate limiting amino acid for glutathione synthesis. When I figured that out, I started taking whey protein, and I quit being a vegan, and that was a big step on recovering from chronic fatigue.
I'm really glad you brought this up, because we have a lot of practitioners that have been using glutathione therapy to much success with a lot of our clients. And I know there's a lot of articles on Rogue Health and Fitness where you talk about N-acetylcysteine. I personally used it. And if anyone here listening right now or watching this just goes on NCBI or PubMed and just looks up all the depression or bipolar or schizophrenia research on N-acetylcysteine, and as an adjunctive therapy, meaning they just use this in accordance with their medication, it's not just impressive, it's actually pretty startling how effective precursor to glutathione, which is N-acetylcysteine, how effective that is. So why isn't this as big? I mean, obviously, besides that there's no patent for it and you can't it's possibly curing people, but what was your experience with N-acetylcysteine? What do you recommend? What have you seen work for people?
Well, yeah, like you say, why isn't this more recognized and more used? And you said it yourself, it's cheap, it's not patented. So there's no incentive for anyone to push it on to doctors to get them to prescribe it and so on. It's just cheap. I wrote an article a year or two ago about how they studied it in the condition lupus. And one of not only did it have some very good results, but they pointed out in this article that lupus medications were cost hundreds of dollars a month, and that the amount of N-acetylcysteine that they were taking was, $15 to $20 a month. So there's one reason why more people haven't heard of it. I did start taking it at the time, and I believe it had an effect on me on getting out of chronic fatigue. Later on, I didn't feel the need for it so much because I was taking whey protein and I had quit being a vegan. So, getting enough of the cysteine from other sources can help. In what you're saying about inflammation and what you're saying before about inflammation and its manifestations as disease, what I figure is happening in these cases that you mentioned with bipolar and depression and so on, and acetylcysteine, is that there's a state of oxidative stress going on in these people, and for whatever reason, genetic perhaps, it manifests in them as, say, bipolar disorder or depression. If somebody with a different genetic makeup or maybe some other factors, it might manifest as something else. But in this case, probably the oxidative stress is affecting the brain somehow, and it's causing these psychiatric disorders. Giving N-acetylcysteine replenishes glutathione and largely ameliorates these problems.
I would love, that would be so fascinating, and I think that would be the biggest shift in the psychiatric community. Just for purposes of this conversation, to shift from this dopaminergic, SSRI model or serotonergic model of depression, mental illness, and then focusing it on an oxidative model, where you have the buildup of this glutamates, these excitatory neurotransmitters. I mean, your brain's no different than any other part of your body. There's going to be oxidative stress. It's
right.
A third of your blood supply. There's a buildup of oxidation, and you need an antioxidant or something, the most potent one being glutathione, and the precursor that can cross the blood-brain barrier, N-acetylcysteine, to just go in there. It's basically just cleaning out all the damage and the excitatory.
Right.
And they'll tell you that's what psychiatric illness is. It's usually, if someone gets on Lamictal or they get on a bipolar medication, they're giving you guys, if you're bipolar, the first drug they're going to give you is an epileptic drug to basically shut down the excitatory process of your brain. So instead of doing it through a chemical, lobotomy, basically, you can do this, your body can regulate it.
Right. I don't know if you saw, well, for one thing, speaking about the different models of psychiatric illness, the idea that the SSRIs are affecting serotonin and that's how they work, as far as I can tell, there's not very much evidence for that. They're anti-inflammatory, and to the extent that they work, that's what they're doing, as far as I can see. The other thing I was going to bring up was, I don't know if you saw, I wrote an article just a couple of weeks ago about this Danish psychiatrist, Dr. Peter Gutsche, I think you would say his name, Gutsche, who basically advocates almost doing away with all these psychiatric medications. He claims that they're killing people at a very high rate.
No doubt.
Much higher rates of death than people who are taking SSRIs, and especially things like benzodiazepines, and that pretty much doing away with 90% of them would just be a big improvement.
I mean, even people taking Benadryl long term. I mean, you look at the brain scans of people that are taking these benzos long term, Klonopin, their brains literally atrophying. It's destroying them.
Right.
Yeah, that particular slice of medicine is very interesting. If you look at, you know, who funds what and what's going on. I mean,
Y-
that's going to be a huge shift. Hopefully, I
yes.
think
Yes.
it's kind of scary to think about, actually.
Yes. You know, huge numbers of people. In the United States, about 25% of middle-aged women are taking an antidepressant, and that's mind-boggling to me. Why would 25% of people of middle-aged women need an antidepressant?
The thing
Uh,
that I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. Just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I can't believe that a mental illness would be that common.
It's yeah, I think it was like 50% of the population is mentally ill now, or something. That has like an
Yeah,
actual.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
what is normal? If more people are mentally ill than normal, I had an aunt that was that had pretty intense schizophrenia, and I think the thing that I mean, this is when they were doing some of the harder core schizophrenia drugs, like, you know, the clozapines, things like that. And if you look at the data of the side effects of the long-term usage. I mean, she died very, very, there's no history of cancer, you know, deep down in our family. And she died of some pretty rough forms of leukemia. She had like 3-4
Oh
different
boy.
types of cancers at once. And I have zero doubt that the medication that she was on exacerbated or altered or triggered some kind of oncogenic response in her body, or some kind of immunogenic response.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm sure that information is out there being, you know, kind of swept under the rug.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, on a lighter note,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Right.
I want to talk about, tell us more about, so your big thing right now is, I know you're huge in the anti-aging space. We can touch upon that, but you're really big on the body composition aspect of, you know, weight versus muscle. You know, people are so hung up on, you know, their body fat or their weight, but what really matters as far as, you know, lean muscle and its relation to longevity, inflammatory markers, you know, just overall health.
Right. This is a very interesting topic, which speaks to what we were talking about before, about what the mainstream recommends and so on. And the mainstream recommends you exercise, and that's great. Exercise is a very healthy thing to do in almost any way, shape, or form. But they emphasize aerobic exercise, and aerobic exercise does nothing to little to nothing to build muscle. And in fact, a lot of people out there doing heavy aerobic exercise are going to be losing muscle. So what and how that relates to body composition is that our normal way of measuring whether someone is of normal weight or overweight or obese is body mass index, which is a measure that uses height and weight. So under 25 body mass index is considered normal weight. Over 25 is overweight. Over 30 is obese. The thing is that as it relates to health, it's not the weight overall that matters. It's body fat. So excess body fat is what's causing the health problems. Now it turns out that BMI, body mass index, underdiagnoses a lot of people for obesity. I've noticed on my site a lot of guys are concerned about, BMI is not a good measure because say so-and-so football player has a BMI of 30 and he's obviously in great shape, he's not obese. And well, yeah, okay, good point. But how many people does that apply to? I'm guessing, a small single-digit percent of the
Yeah.
population might have that problem. The problem is much bigger in the other direction. So a lot of people with a quote unquote normal BMI are in reality overweight or obese, and because when you measure their body fat, then you find out that by using body fat definitions of overweight or obesity, they are in fact overweight or obese. Some researchers have proposed lowering the BMI threshold of obesity to 28 for men and 24 for women, because there's more specificity and sensitivity using those levels. Body fat, to get a good measure of body fat, as I'm sure you know, requires a DEXA scan or some other relatively sophisticated procedure, more sophisticated than stepping on a scale, which is why it isn't as used as much. But if you lowered those BMI thresholds, you would catch more people who were overweight or obese. So body composition is very important for health. In my book Muscle Up, I talked extensively about this, how more muscular strength is related to lower cancer rates, for example, lower heart disease rates. In other words, take a group of people, ordinary people, you test them, you find out, do something like hand grip strength, or another one, ability to get up off the floor from a seated position is another one that people have looked at. These people are all much healthier and have much lower death rates than people who either have a real hard time getting up off the floor, who have weak hand grip strength, and so on. Muscle strength is very important for health. Another thing is that when they look at BMI, they find that you've probably heard about this, that there's some who have said there's some kind of health advantage to being slightly overweight. Well, I don't buy that, and there have been a number of publications that have looked into that, and it seems to be driven by people who either smoke or former smokers who have lower BMIs, and when you exclude that population from the study, you find out that all other things being equal, lower is better. So and this all has to do with body composition, just having less body fat. There's been a lot of speculation, for example, on calorie restriction, which has been shown to extend lifespan in animals, and so people are trying to find out, well, how does this work? Does it lower inflammation, lower oxidative stress? Does it lower IGF-1? All this kind of thing. But one of the key things that it does is it lowers body fat a lot. Animals that are calorie restricted have much lower body fat levels, and this could be a big reason why they live longer. So I think it's important for people to realize this, and that going to the gym and getting on a treadmill, for example, is just not the optimal type of exercise to do. I'm just a huge advocate of weightlifting or of other kinds of strength training for virtually everyone. I don't want to knock aerobic exercise too much, because basically any kind of exercise is better than none. But if you want to be fit and healthy, I think that it behooves people to look into strength training and to do that. And it's much more it's much more beneficial to health. Because it's improving your body composition. Aerobic exercise just has little effect on that, and in fact, study after study has shown that aerobic exercise basically does not help people lose weight, and that the only form of exercise that really has any chance of helping people lose weight is weight training, strength training. So I'm just a huge advocate of it, and I think more people should be doing it. I see in my own local gym, I see people every time they're in there on the treadmill, the stair stepper, or whatever, and they never make any progress. There's this idea that they want to burn the fat off, and as a concept, it just doesn't work. It's just far too easy to replace all those calories right after. Exercise makes you hungry, so you go into the gym, burn 300 calories or whatever on your aerobic whatever your aerobic method of choice is, and then you go out and you're hungry, and you've put it all back on and probably then some. So the key to weight loss and better health is changing your body composition by gaining muscle and losing fat.
Well, it's also, it's fascinating how much, if you were to measure how much more inflammation those people probably have in their system and how much damage they're probably doing themselves just running and pounding, and not to mention the joint wear.
Right.
What would be an optimal amount? I mean, like, is it 3 times a week, 4 times a week of just weightlifting, like 40 minutes or so?
Well, that's a really good question, and it'll obviously vary between different people. Just talk about my own routine. I go twice a week, more specifically once every 3 days, and I found that that's a routine that works well for me. If you lift weights with intensity and with putting all your effort into it, you do need recovery time. And I think that it is a mistake I think that a lot of young guys make. They want to go into the gym every day. And in the case of weightlifting, less can definitely be more. If you give yourself that time to rest and your muscles to grow, you do damage to muscles when you lift weights, and they need recovery time. So while I go in once every 3 days, maybe somebody younger with different goals could go in a bit more, but I personally don't think anyone should do it more than 3 times a week. If you lift weights with intensity, you should have at least 1 rest day in between sessions. Now, I'm not saying that you should do only that. I'm big on walking myself on my off days. I go walking, and I also do a bit of high intensity interval training. And so people can do that, but in addition to weightlifting, that's pretty much what I advocate.
What you just said, a guest recently, it resonated a lot, where Brad Davidson, he works with a lot of like special forces kind of guys and some ex-athletes. And his whole thing is all about just recovery. And you look at these guys that have 18-pack abs, or, they look like they're shredded. You do the blood work on them, and their cortisol's through the roof. I mean, they're doing some major damage to their body. I mean, you look at their CRPs, their homocysteines are just, it's scary.
Right. Yes, recovery is just so important, and I found that out maybe the hard way, just by trying to work out too much, and you really feel like crap on some of those off days because you're just driving yourself too hard. As far as goals for muscle building, intensity of effort is one of the most important things you can do, and that's a whole nother discussion. We don't need to go into that unless you want to, but my point being is that a lot of people think that, well, the more they go to the gym, the better, and in fact, the rest aspect of building muscle is just as important as doing the actual work. Muscles don't grow in the gym, they grow outside the gym. They grow in between. You go into the gym and do all that work. It's after that they grow, and you need to give them plenty of recovery.
Let's dive in on that. So you're alluding, I'm assuming, to some of those studies that show that short-term high intensity exercise is more valuable than, let's say, 40 minutes of just moderate exercise?
Well, right. So another, this form of exercise, high intensity interval training, that consists of short bouts of exercise with a little bit of recovery in between, and then another bout. For example, it all got going with people doing stationary cycling. So they would put these people on a stationary cycle and have them go all out for 30 seconds. Then they would pedal at a very low level for a few minutes. Then they do it again, and they found out that basically just literally doing minutes of exercise a week, that they got in just as good a shape as people who were cycling for hours. And so, yeah, so intensity of effort is extremely important, and it also goes for building muscle. The most important aspect of building muscle is going to failure on your sets. Just pushing yourself to that limit, to where you can't go anymore, and that's when your muscles, whichever muscle you happen to be exercising, is going to learn that it better get bigger because you're putting this incredible load on it. So yeah, intensity of effort is very important.
What's your take on for like personal opinion as far as personal experiences, and your take on hormone optimization for men and women respectively in regards to performance and longevity?
Well, I've written a bit about testosterone, and I have some experience with that myself, taking an aromatase inhibitor, and that's a good option, I think, for many men, older men. The problem there is, of course, getting a doctor to prescribe it, because most of them won't, I believe. And I think testosterone replacement is a good option for many men. However, I would also say that a lot of the low testosterone you see in men, whether younger or older, is probably due to lifestyle. It's probably due to excess body fat, to eating crap food, and not doing enough or the right kind of exercise. And I think that men should try to optimize those first before looking into testosterone replacement therapy or an aromatase inhibitor. By all means, if a guy's eating right and working out right, and he has low percentage of body fat and so on, and his testosterone is still low, by all means, I think he should look into it. Also, as far as its relation to long life, a lot of these there have just been scare stories about testosterone, which I think are just all but baseless.
Yeah.
So I think that any man interested in it should look into it and do it if necessary. Yes. As far as women, I don't have too much to say on that, other than the hormone replacement therapy that was so touted a decade or two ago, and then they found out it wasn't so great. So beyond that, I don't know too much about that.
It's amazing, those female studies, when you're looking at it. I was looking at some of the research for that, and they were giving them the horse estrogen. They're giving them either synthetic or equine compounds, which obviously are going to lead to some kind of biochemical disaster.
Right.
Using the actual thing. So there's a lot of it's funny, if you look at a lot of the ancient texts, you look at a lot of the ancient just more esoteric texts, and there's always this divide, not a divide, but a confluence of the let's say the metaphysical or what have you with the body, the physical aspect of things. And they really do harp on the endocrine system. They make particular mention to it from whether it's spiritually, physically, there is this crossroads. And I think we're going to find out soon is that the endocrine system is probably the most important, functional aspect of the body, because it really does dictate and control everything, and we really know nothing about it. And there's so much nonsense about it just floating out there. Right.
Yes. Someone told me a long time ago that by the time you get to an endocrinologist, you're gone. As far as because even the endocrinologists have a hard time balancing everything and figuring out what's going on. So maintaining good endocrine function by lifestyle and diet and so on, exercise, I think is very important. But yes, definitely testosterone replacement therapy should definitely be an option.
You could even make the argument that a lot of societal ills are probably as a result of some of these deficiencies or possibly endocrine disorders. This polarization of the masculine feminine that's going on, whether that's maliciously being done or not, but it is a root cause of a lot of societal ills that's going on.
Yes, and it also works the other way too. I'm sure you've read these things, for example, about when your football team wins a game, that testosterone goes up. And so likewise, if one can imagine that if you're always being browbeaten for being a man, that there's something wrong with you, that you're a sexist, and why do this kind of thing. Well, after a while, guys would be walking around with their heads down and their testosterone levels declining, and that could be a very real cause of declining testosterone levels. As I'm sure there's this what they call a secular decline in testosterone levels. So they found that, of course, testosterone levels decline with age, and that's been known, and whether it's normal or not, it's been known. They've kind of thought, okay, well, older men are not going to have as high a testosterone level.
But now Mick Jagger, right?
Yeah, right. What did he just have, like his 20th kid or something? Yeah. But now what they're finding out is that just to pull up some numbers, a 25-year-old today has lower testosterone than a 25-year-old did in 1980. So what's going on there? And that happens for all ages, and it's actually a fairly large decline, something like 20%. So yeah, what's going on? A lot of speculation. I don't think anybody knows the exact answer.
Well, it's funny you mentioned this like cultural castration that's going on, and layered on top of that, just from check, we're seeing a lot of guys coming in that get their blood work checked, and there's different pockets of the country. And as I look into this more, for instance, the U.S. Geological Survey in 2008 did this study where they looked at the fish species in the Potomac River area, which is a pretty heavily populated region. I mean, basically it's the epicenter of our framework of our country here, if you will. 80% of the fish, this is back in 2008, were found to be intersex. And they directly attributed that to the ethyl estrates and the estrogens from perhaps birth control or whatever runoff. Now, they're saying, oh, it's not a big deal, right? It's diluted. But these compounds are so concentrated and powerful that just a few drops in a couple swimming pools, no fish will be able to breed or even survive in that. Now, you can only filter that out with carbon filtration. You're lucky if your local government has reverse osmosis of the water supply. So there's no way that's not getting back directly into the water supply.
Right.
Having pervasive contact with men, getting into their fat tissue, and we don't know what that's doing to ourselves. I mean,
right.
Just environmental factors alone, not to mention the media trying to cut everyone's balls off at every turn. But
Right. These endocrine disruptors, not only are they in the water, but they're pervasive in things like personal care products. So basically, you have men, using whatever personal care product, like say deodorants or aftershaves or something like that, and that they have the potential to disrupt endocrine production, and found in other things too, like plastics and packaging and so on. So that stuff is definitely real.
would you say there's a war on masculinity on any plane?
Well, I would, yes. I think that normal, from what I see in the mainstream media, normal masculinity is just frowned upon, and you're supposed to be a kind of I don't know, sensitive and always giving in, and to everyone else, to women and to everyone else. So yes, I think so. And normal masculinity is mocked in the mainstream. So yeah, I definitely think so. There's stories about how oh, it's terrible for teenage boys to be going to the gym and lifting weights. It's toxic masculinity, and they should be discouraged from doing that. This kind of thing. So and then you have in movies, so many of the actors, the roles that they play are just kind of fat doofuses with no leadership qualities and so on. And this is supposed to be funny, and that's the way it is. So yeah, so I would agree with that.
So I mean, having said that, what is quote unquote normal masculinity?
Normal masculinity is
Or healthy, I should say.
Healthy masculinity. I think it's leadership. I think it is not caring a whole lot about what other people think. Having integrity to do what you think is right, without without always be worrying about what somebody else is thinking. Well, I think that sums it up. And to act as a man, and to be proud of it, and there's nothing to be ashamed of whatsoever.
Who are some individuals that had a direct effect on you, and who imparted the most, I guess, wisdom, or who are some people that you looked up to?
Well, I've always looked up to military men, though I never had the honor of being in the military myself, and I also I look up to people who are leading the way. I mean, here's a good example: Donald Trump. He's a man. Not only is he just enormously successful, and even more successful now since he's just been elected, but he goes through life without apology. That doesn't mean, of course, walking all over people or anything like that, but it means being yourself. It means being goal driven, and keeping at it, being persistent and working hard till you get what you want, till you get your goal.
Not worrying about naysayers and haters, so to speak. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
What are 2 or 3 books that really had a huge effect on you, or that your personal favorites?
Well, when I was younger, I read Thoreau's book Walden, and that had a big influence on me. And it's funny because I look back on it now and I think, that had a big influence on me, because I don't feel like it's influencing me too much anymore. But I suppose someone who's maybe feels not terribly materialistic, that resonates with you, and trying to realize that what's important in life. I've read. I went through a phase of reading lots of philosophy. I was raised religiously as a Catholic, and there came a time in my life when I wanted to try to figure out, well, what is the truth behind all this? What's the truth behind life? So I've read immensely in philosophers. Schopenhauer is
He's great.
yeah. I mean, there's just no one like him. I think he just got closer to the truth than just
He
about
went
it.
deep, man. That guy went deep.
Absolutely.
Much to his chagrin, probably.
Yeah. So I mean, I've read virtually everything he's written. I've got, I don't know, quite a few.
What's your favorite Schopenhauer? I guess not quote. I mean, he has so many good ones. What's your favorite? I guess thought bubble of his that really sticks with you.
Well, that I'm having a hard time coming up with one.
There's so many, yeah.
There's so much. As he said, his huge book, "The World is Will and Representation," which in total is something like 1,800 pages. He said it's really just basically one idea, and he figured he needed the whole book to describe his one idea. And the ideas that are what we see as reality, our perceptions, are not really reality. That it's just that it's based on what makes us fitter human beings. That evolution has designed us to perceive reality in a certain way, but reality in itself is something that's almost we can't comprehend.
Do you think that we're decaying in a sense, like some of his topics touched upon, or is there hope for where we're moving as a organism, like a collective organism?
Well, boy, that's a huge topic. I think that our civilization in many ways is losing confidence in itself. We're questioning everything that made us, whereas in Schopenhauer's day, which, well, he died over 150 years ago, European civilization had great confidence in itself and didn't question itself in quite the same way. So, on the other hand, we have these incredible leaps in technology. I mean, it just astounds me, really, because I mean, just a few short years ago, we didn't even have the internet, and I can hardly keep up with what's going on now. I mean, some of these younger guys I talk to, they grew up with the internet, and I didn't even have it, and I don't know, till I was middle-aged anyway.
Yeah.
So and more and more now, we just saw the other day that Uber's going to have driverless cars in San Francisco, and this kind of news is happening all the time. So to my mind, you have this huge dichotomy between these huge leaps in technology that we're doing and a kind of loss in confidence in our civilization. So where that's going to go, well, smarter people than me are speculating on it, so I don't know. I personally am not too optimistic about it.
What would you tell yourself if you could go back in time and tell yourself, whether it's in regards to health, society in general, in your 20s and 30s?
Well, I think what I would tell myself is to be your own man, and to not do things just because other people expect you to do them. We all go through. Well, there are stereotypes, and stereotypes are just generalizations, and they can be very useful. The problem is that we tend to live by stereotypes of ourselves. So therefore, say a young man, 18, gets out of high school and think, okay, well, I guess I'm supposed to go to college now. That's a stereotype. then he'll be whatever age, let's say 25, he'll say, well, I guess it's time for me to get married now, because that's what everybody says I'm supposed to be doing at this age. And so I think it's important to realize when we are acting according to a stereotype. Just because someone or society as a whole thinks we should do something or expects us to do something, I think that while it is not necessarily always a bad thing, you should realize when you're doing that, you should think for yourself, is this really what I want to do, what I need to do, or am I doing it because someone else expects me to do? My family, society, anybody else, my boss, whatever. Are they expecting me to do it? I think I think that people should realize that, young men and women should realize that, and know their own minds, that if they want to do something, they do it because they want to do it, because it fits in with their goals and sense of purpose. When we get older too, this is another thing I've been thinking along these lines recently about stereotypes, is because at my age, I'm 61 years old, you're expected to live and act in certain ways. People retire and then they sit in front of television, and then I don't know what else they do, play golf or something a little bit. And that's not what I want to do. I want to keep going, and I want to keep doing what I'm doing, my writing and so on. And so you're faced with this, these stereotypes of what you're kind of expected to be doing at a certain age. I wrote about this recently, that according to actuaries, by the age of 82, half of all men that are my age right now will be dead. So
wait, can you say that one more time?
50% of all men that are my age right now will be expected to have 21 more years of life before they die. And so you look at the averages; those are the actual facts, right? So half of all men my age will be dead in 21 years.
It's like the Fight Club.
Right. And so you think, it's real easy to fall into this trap, or anyway, this pervasive mindset of, oh, well, am I going to be dead in 21 years? Then, there's not enough time, so I might as well just kick back and relax and not try to do too much. And maybe I'll just pop a few beers and sit in front of the TV. And that's something that I think you have to fight against. I don't think, personally, I don't think the way most older men are living is very fulfilling, and so I don't want to do that. So that's another way that you have to fight against the stereotypes and think for yourself.
So just to play devil's advocate before we go off, is how much of this anti-aging movement that's coming, it's rising right now, and you talk about baby boomers. How much of that is as a result of this kind of ever-pervasive, nagging fear of death that we have, versus actually wanting to capitalize and really take advantage of life?
Yes, I think there is a lot to that, a lot to what you say, and I've even asked myself, why am I interested in it? And I've always felt personally, like most of the things I do for health, my diet and exercise, and then I'm writing about it, take supplements and all this sort of thing, I've always looked at it as kind of just an extension of, well, you look both ways before you cross the street, right? You don't want to get hit by a car, so why not extend that into more broadly? And if you don't want to die by getting hit by a car, you don't want to die other ways either. It's just a matter of some conscientiousness and so on. But I think there is that very real fear of death. There's been a lot. There's obviously religion is less important for so many people, so they don't have that. And so for myself, I've come to the conclusion that it really doesn't matter that much. The important thing is to live a fulfilling life. Obviously, I would just as soon avoid cancer or heart disease, but what lengths am I willing to go to do that? I don't know. There are people out there with a lot of money that seem to be, there's gene therapies coming up. There are going to be people that are willing to spend a lot of money to do it. I don't know how important that is. I just myself, I just want to be healthy right now and to live a good life. And when the time comes, it comes.
Awesome. Yeah, just maximizing every second you get here. It really is a gift.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So where can we find out? I mean, I think people, instead of going to see Rogue One, they should definitely go to roguehealthandfitness.com. Where else what's coming up on the horizon as far as writing wise? I mean, you're pumping out a lot. You're very prodigious, to say the least, as far as like pumping out some material. What's coming up for you? Just had Muscle Up was the last one, right?
Dumping Iron was the last one, yeah, and Muscle Up was just prior to that. I'm working on another book right now, and it has an anti-aging theme to it. And I work on my website regularly. I'm writing for a site called The Mission, which is a kind of a startup site that has a lot of readers. So I'm getting new readers that way, and that's what I'm doing. I'm just keeping on.
Awesome, man.
And I do have plans. I've got a lot of ideas for more books. And
give us one real quick.
The one is this whole idea of body composition and how that affects health, and so why keeping that body fat off is important.
Awesome.
And how going against what the mainstream, or kind of like George Costanza, doing the opposite.
The fake news.
Yeah, right. Getting away from the fake news and how you can have better health.
Such a good episode. That's one of the best episodes.
Yeah. Right.
Petey, awesome. Thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed that. And roguehealthandfitness.com. You guys go to it, read all the articles on there. Get Dumping Iron, get Muscle Up. Those are all on Kindle now too, right?
That's right, and awesome. Paperback. Yep.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron. It was a pleasure.
Likewise.